You are 53 and you have $500 million. Your neighbors think you sell insurance. You've let them think this for 11 years because correcting it would require a conversation you have no interest in having. You drive a 2016 pickup truck with a dent in the tailgate from a load of mulch you misjudged in 2019. You coach a youth soccer team on Saturday mornings, and the other parents call you coach and nothing else. You are sitting in your kitchen at 6 a.m., reading a quarterly report from your family office, a document that, if it appeared on a kitchen table in your neighborhood for any reason other than this one, would require an explanation nobody there is equipped to receive. By the end of this video, you'll definitely see that silence isn't modesty. It's a structural decision with measurable financial and psychological consequences, and most people who reach this level never choose it deliberately. They back into it one declined opportunity at a time until the habit becomes the identity. You'll find out exactly what that decision costs and what it protects. This is your life as a quiet half-billionaire. Year 1. The first decision. You are 41 and your net worth crosses $11 million for the first time, the result of selling a logistics software company you'd built for 9 years to a strategic acquirer. The deal closes on a Thursday. You don't tell your extended family the number. You tell them the sale happened and that you're doing fine, a phrase that satisfies the question without inviting the follow-up question that the actual number would invite. Your wife agrees with this approach before you fully articulated it. She arrived at the same instinct independently, which tells you something about why the marriage has worked for 14 years. A local business journal calls, having heard about the acquisition through industry channels, requesting an interview about your exit. You decline. The reporter mentions, almost as a courtesy, that the story will run regardless with whatever figures are publicly available through the SEC filing related to the acquirer. You can't stop this. You can stop everything that follows it. You don't change your house, you don't change your car. You make one purchase that week, a $40 fishing rod you'd wanted for 2 years, the kind of purchase that would have felt frivolous at your previous net worth and feels like nothing at all now, which is itself the first piece of information about what $11 million actually changes and what it doesn't. The first rule: the decision to stay quiet isn't made once. It's made in the first week, through a series of small refusals, and every refusal after that is simply maintaining a pattern rather than making a new choice. Year 3. The test. You are 43 and your net worth crosses $34 million. The proceeds from the first sale invested aggressively into a combination of index funds, private equity, and a second venture you've quietly backed as a silent investor. Your daughter, 16, mentions at dinner that a classmate's family just bought a lake house and asks, with the specific bluntness of a teenager, whether you could afford something like that. You say you probably could. She asks why you don't. You tell her the truth, which is that you don't actually want the lake house. You want the version of your life that currently exists, the one where Saturday mornings involve youth soccer and nobody at the field knows what your bank account looks like, and a lake house would require you to either explain the money or live a visibly different life than the one you've built. She doesn't fully understand the answer at 16. She will understand it more completely at 28, after watching what happens to a different family in your extended circle when their wealth became visible, and the texture of every relationship around them changed within 18 months. You also declined this year an invitation to a regional business awards dinner that would have publicly recognized the acquisition. The organizer is confused by the decline. Recognition is usually requested, not avoided. You don't explain further than, "Not really my thing," which is true and also incomplete. The second rule, at $34 million, the temptation isn't to spend lavishly. It's to be seen. And the difference between those two temptations is the one almost nobody warns you about. Year 6. The system. You are 46 and your net worth crosses $98 million. You establish your first family office structure this year. Not a large operation, 3 people, an investment manager, an accountant, and an estate attorney who coordinate quarterly rather than constantly. Your investment manager raises gently the question of philanthropy at this scale. Foundations, named giving, the kind of structured generosity that typically comes with visibility built into its architecture. You set up the giving anonymously instead, working through a donor-advised fund that allows you to direct significant capital toward causes you care about, a regional literacy program, a veterans transition fund, a scholarship at the state university you attended, without your name appearing on any building, program, or press release. The literacy program's director, in a thank you note that reaches you through 3 layers of intermediaries, doesn't know your name. She knows the gift exists and what it's funding. This is precisely the balance you wanted. This is also exactly where the architecture of how debt and ownership actually function starts to matter at a structural level. Because the same instincts that keep you quiet about wealth are connected to a much larger pattern most people never examine. Who actually profits from debt? Who gets trapped by it? And the specific 5-stage shift from being controlled by debt to using debt as a tool you fully control. I broke that entire framework down in the video appearing right now. But for now, let's stay with what happens as your own structure continues to mature. The third rule: at $98 million, systems replace decisions. The fewer choices you have to make actively, the less surface area exists for the wealth to become visible by accident. Year 8. The inheritance question. You are 48, and your net worth crosses $160 million. The family office's structure now mature enough that you spend less than 2 hours a month on active financial decisions. Your son, 19, starts asking different questions than your daughter asked at 16. Not whether you can afford things. He's grown up inside the quiet version of wealth long enough to assume the answer is usually yes, and rarely act on it. But what happens to the money eventually, and whether he's supposed to know more about it now that he's technically an adult? You and your wife have avoided this conversation longer than you probably should have, partly because the silence that protects you from the outside world had quietly extended itself into your own household without either of you deciding it should. You schedule a meeting with your estate attorney specifically to figure out how much of the actual structure your children need to understand before they're 25 and how much can wait until they're 30. And the attorney tells you something that reframes the entire question. The danger isn't telling them too early. The danger is telling them in a way that makes the money feel like the most important fact about their own future, rather than one fact among many. You start that year a practice of involving your son in one specific decision annually. This year, which of 3 causes the donor-advised fund should weight more heavily for the next 12 months? He takes the assignment seriously, researches each cause for 2 weeks, and makes a recommendation that surprises you with its reasoning. You don't tell him the dollar amount behind the decision. He doesn't ask. The exercise works exactly because the number stays out of the room, while the judgment required to handle it gets built anyway. The fourth rule: at $160 million, the silence you've maintained with the outside world has to be deliberately, carefully broken inside your own family, on a schedule you control, before the absence of information becomes its own kind of damage. Year 9. The near miss. You are 49 and your net worth crosses $210 million. A distant cousin, struggling financially, reaches out for help, not knowing your actual number, simply knowing you did well with the software company years ago. You help quietly, in an amount that changes his immediate situation meaningfully, without revealing the scale of what's actually available. He thanks you with the specific gratitude of someone who believes he's received a generous gift from someone comfortable, but not wealthy in any extraordinary sense. You let him believe this. The alternative, explaining the actual gap between what he assumes and what's true, would change the relationship in ways you've watched happen to other families and decided deliberately you don't want for your own. A journalist, this same year, working on a feature about successful but low-profile entrepreneurs in your region, identifies you through public business filings and requests comment. You decline again, more firmly this time, and your attorney sends a brief, polite letter clarifying that you have no interest in participating and would appreciate being excluded from the piece entirely. The journalist complies. The piece runs without you. You read it when it publishes, recognizing 2 other people in it whose lives, post-publication, visibly change. More requests for money, more scrutiny, one of them eventually moving to a different town specifically to escape the new visibility. You watch this happen to someone else and feel, for the first time, something close to relief, about every uncomfortable decline you've made to avoid the same outcome yourself. The fifth rule. At $210 million, you start to see the actual cost other people pay for visibility you've successfully avoided, and the avoidance stops feeling like modesty and starts feeling like protection. Year 11, Peacetime. You are 53, sitting in your kitchen at 6 a.m., the quarterly report from your family office in front of you. The number on the report's final summary page is $500 million. Total net worth across investments, real estate, the original business stake that converted into equity in the acquirer and has appreciated significantly since, and the philanthropic fund that has, over 5 years, quietly redirected over $40 million toward causes that will never carry your name. You drive the same truck with the same dent. You coach the same soccer team. The other parents still call you coach, and the conversation at the sideline last Saturday was about a referee's questionable call in the second half, not about anything resembling your actual financial life. You think, sometimes, about the version of this story where you'd made different choices at 41. The interview, the recognition dinner, the named foundation, the larger house in the more visible neighborhood. You don't know that version of yourself with any certainty, but you've watched enough of your peers live it to have a reasonably accurate sense of its texture. More requests, less certainty about who actually wants to know you versus who wants something from the number. A calendar increasingly organized around managing perception rather than living the actual days. You finish the coffee, you close the report. Your daughter, 28 now, calls. She runs a small nonprofit in another state, funded partly, though she doesn't know the exact mechanism, by the same donor-advised fund that supported the literacy program 11 years ago. You talk for 12 minutes about her week. Neither of you mentions money once, because money, in your specific version of this life, was never actually the subject worth discussing. Somewhere right now, someone is at a kitchen table with a number on a screen that just crossed something significant. A sale, an inheritance, a liquidity event of some kind, and they are deciding in this exact week whether to tell people. They don't know yet that this decision, made quietly in the first 7 days, will determine more about the next decade of their relationships than almost any investment choice they'll make with the actual money. The number doesn't change who you are. What you decide to do with the silence around it does. Choose the silence deliberately, not by accident, not because you forgot to mention it once and the habit simply continued. Choose it, the way you'd choose any other structural decision that will outlast the moment you made it.